It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story.
And I do hereby declare that Richard Parker is duly elected.
Labour pulls off a shock victory in the West Midlands mayoral election, dealing a major blow to the Prime Minister.
We started in Blackpool with a 26% swing, and we've ended in the West Midlands with our new mayor, Richard Parker, as the West Midlands mayor.
I therefore declare that Sadiq Khan has been duly elected as Mayor of London.
Sadiq Khan wins emphatically in the capital to secure a third term as Mayor of London.
I promise to repay the trust you've placed in me by working tirelessly to deliver the fairer, safer and greener London you deserve.
And victory for Labour in Manchester too, as Andy Burnham secures more votes than all of his opponents combined. Also tonight, Brazil is hit by the worst floods in 80 years, with more than 59 people killed and dozens more still missing. The parents of sword attack victim Daniel Angerin paid tribute to the teenager, saying they have lost the most loved and amazing son. And in East Sussex, the spring festivities continue, even though 31,000 properties are without water. Plus, in the sport, Ipswich are back in the Premier League for the first time in 22 years. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. A very good evening. Thanks for joining us. The Labour Party are celebrating a shock success in the West Midlands tonight, with their candidate, Richard Parker, securing a narrow victory in the race to be mayor. Following a recount, the Conservative incumbent, Andy Street, was defeated by just over 1,500 votes in a major blow for the Prime Minister. Earlier, on a big day for Labour, Sadiq Khan won a historic third term as Mayor of London, with a convincing win over his Conservative title. Well, in a moment, we'll hear from our political editor, Beth Rigby, but first, a look at how things stand in the elections overall tonight. Well, in the local council elections, with just one council still to declare, Labour have 1,140 seats. That's a gain of 185, with control of 50 councils. That's a gain of 8. The Conservatives have lost 473 seats and 12 councils, leaving them with control over just 6. In London, Labour's Sadiq Khan secured a convincing victory over his Conservative rival, Susan Hall. As you can see, he received over 1 million votes, a majority of more than 276,000 over Miss Hall. It's the first time any candidate for London Mayor has won a third term in office. And in the West Midlands, which declared only in the last hour or so, Labour's Richard Parker won with 225,000 votes, 1,500 more than the incumbent Andy Street. Well, hailing his party's results in the last hour, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, described the mayoral win in the West Midlands as phenomenal and beyond our expectations, and he called for a general election as soon as possible.
This is a very important set of election results for me and the Labour Party. I set out 4 and a bit years ago to take the Labour Party from a dreadful defeat and return us to government as a changed Labour Party, and the Labour Party back in the service of working people. And this is a phenomenally important set of elections, the last set of elections before we go to that general election. We had to prove that we were making progress. We've shown that we're making progress, and I'm so pleased that we've earned the trust and confidence of so many voters across the whole of the country.
Well, let's get more from our political editor, Beth Rigby. 48 hours, Beth, since polls closed pretty much. What message have these results sent to the Prime Minister and to the Leader of the Opposition?
Well, look, I was just at this rally here in Birmingham as Keir Starmer, who had been in the East Midlands. He then went to watch the Arsenal game in the pub, and he's basically been sitting up in the West Midlands, east to west, all afternoon, waiting for this moment. Could he come here to claim the win with Richard Parker? And I have to say that the energy and the euphoria was palpable in that gathering of Labour activists. They were so wired, excited, euphoric about this win, because for them, the figure was saying to me that this is the one they wanted. They were pulling out resource from Tees Valley up in where Ben Houchen, the Conservative mayor, managed to hold on. They were pulling resource down to the West Midlands, and they were really fighting to try and take this Tory jewel from the crown. It has left Rishi Sunak with just one mayor standing. So they were delighted to have that win. And Starmer started that stump speech to activists saying, we started off winning Blackpool South with that 26-point swing, and we've ended up taking this mayoralty off the Tories that they thought they could hold. But my goodness, Jonathan, how tight was it? 1,508 votes in it. It really was on a wafer-thin margin that they won. But the symbolism for it for Labour is just enormous, because I think it is fair to say that in the council elections over the past 48 hours, there wasn't that kind of barnstorming momentum from Labour. And the reason I say this is that the Tories were losing, 430 or so seats, maybe a few more. But Labour were not the beneficiaries entirely of these Tory losses. They were picking up, 170 seats. On our projections, the vote share not big enough to potentially take them into majority territory at a general election. And then with this win tonight, with this Tory scalp, you could feel from the Labour activists, and I think from Keir Starmer himself, that they really are now believing that they really can do this. And it felt like, he talks about a change election. That energy in the room felt like a change moment for me, where Labour had got this win and it meant so much to them, and symbolically for the party to be able to say to the Conservatives, we took your crown jewel in the West Midlands and we are coming for those seats. It gives Starmer momentum, and it will leave the Conservatives hugely deflated.
Very interesting. Beth in Birmingham, many thanks. OK, let's turn our attention to the capital now, where Sadiq Khan has become the first person to be elected London mayor for a third term. There were rumours the Conservative candidate, Susan Hall, could threaten his position following criticism of Mr Khan's decision to expand the capital's ultra-low emission zone. But it was another disappointing performance for the Tory candidate. Sky's political correspondent Darren McCaffrey reports.
Re-elected for a record third time.
I therefore declare that Sadiq Khan has been duly elected as Mayor of London.
The jubilant Sadiq Khan achieves what none of his predecessors have.
It's the honour of my life to serve the city that I love, and I'm beyond humbled right now.
Really isn't about making history, it's about shaping the future of our city. It's humbling that the city that's given so much to my family, I'm able to serve. And it's about making sure that we address the everyday problems, like the cost of living crisis, making sure we provide free school meals for our kids.
Sadiq Khan's win was largely expected, but the fact that he did better than last time only adds to the misery this weekend for the Conservatives, and it reinforces that London is very much a Labour city. And the Conservative candidate, Susan Hall, wasn't exactly magnanimous in defeats.
I will continue to hold Sadiq to account, to stand up for the hard-working families, to motorists and to women. I love London, and I urge Sadiq to try harder to make it better for all our sakes.
The Conservatives' campaign was largely based on the obvious opposition to ULEZ, the ultra-low admission charge introduced by Khan. And while the Conservatives did retain some support in outer London, it is a strategy that largely failed. including in Boris Johnson's old constituency of Uxbridge.
He's stopping kids breathing in diesel fumes. He's been good for like the prices on the London transport. I think it's great.
At least he's someone that's listening compared to the other person.
I'm not too pleased, to be honest. I don't think he's very popular around this area, predominantly because of the ULEZ.
And while the Gaza war and Labour's position has become an election issue in some parts of the country, Khan's early call for a ceasefire appears to have helped with these protesters and voters in central London.
I think it's been neither here nor there, really, on that, to be honest. I mean, compared to other people within the Labour Party themselves who have taken positions that I fundamentally disagree with more, I said he's not really an issue in comparison.
He has very clearly said he's against this genocide, so I will voted for him. But I will not be voting for the Labour Party as a whole any longer.
London has become a big electoral problem for the Conservatives. Having now lost 3 times in a row, they don't seem to have a politician or a strategy to end Labour's stranglehold on the capital. Darren McCaffrey, Sky News at London City Hall.
So what do these election results actually tell us? Our correspondent Gurpreet Nawan has been taking a look through the numbers.
Well, we're just waiting for one council still to declare, but we've got a pretty full picture of how everything's played out. You can see here from our tally that Labour are way out in the lead with over 1,000 seats. It's the Conservatives who had a really bruising 48 hours, losing basically half the seats that they were defending. This graphic is useful because it shows us the churn that's happening behind the scenes. And you can see that Labour, they picked up 257 seats, but they lost 72. And it looks like the party is having some problems on its left flank with progressives, younger voters and Muslim voters who are angry about its position on the conflict in Israel and Gaza. It may explain why the Greens and the independent parties are having a good night. We can also see that reflected in our national equivalent vote share. That's when we take a look at the results that we've had and we project them up onto a national level. And you can see that Labour, since 2021, that was the Conservatives' highest ebb when they were benefiting from that vaccine rollout, have picked up votes. But they're not doing anything like as well as they were doing in the 90s during the Blair era. And that can partly be explained by the fact that independent, smaller parties are a much bigger force in local politics these days. You can see that playing out here because Labour over the past year, the vote share has actually dipped, not so much as the Conservatives, however, so they might not be too worried about it, but it's the independents that are causing both parties problems. Now, some caveats to bear in mind. How will all of this play out in a general election? Well, when it comes to independent, smaller parties, people may feel more empowered to vote for them in local elections, but may not necessarily do the same in the general election. They may coalesce around the bigger parties. Also, this doesn't factor in Scotland, and Scotland will be a really important factor in the general election. We know Labour are eyeing up a number of seats north of the border. Overall, fair to say it's been a disappointing 48 hours for the Conservatives. There was that crushing defeat in the by-election in Blackpool South as well, and also in the mayoral contests. We've just got that result in from the West Midlands, but you can see our mayoral map is looking even more red than it was before we went into this. There's that tiny patch of blue over there. That's the Tees Valley, where Ben Houchen has held on to the mayoralty over there. But if we drill further into the data here, we can see that his majority has been significantly reduced from 73% in 2021, worth bearing in mind there are only 2 candidates running there, so that might partly explain why it was so large, to 54%, undoubtedly been hurt by the Conservatives' popularity, despite running a largely personal campaign, didn't wear the rosette on stage, omitted any reference to the Conservatives or many references to the Conservatives in his campaign literature, but has held on to that. Andrew Street, however, wasn't so lucky. It was a tense battle, but in the end, the former mayor missed out to Labour. That will worry the Conservatives and disappoint the Prime Minister.
To some of tonight's other news now, and 59 people have been killed and dozens are missing after record-breaking floods in Brazil. Heavy rain in the southern state of Rio Grande do Sul has caused water levels to reach their highest in some cities since records began nearly 150 years ago. It's the latest in a series of weather disasters in the country and the region, where an extra-tropical cyclone hit last September. Roads have been submerged with bridges destroyed, and the storm has triggered landslides as well as the partial collapse of a dam structure at a hydroelectric power plant. Well, residents near to a second dam have been ordered to evacuate as fears of another collapse grow. Sky's Emma Birchley has more, and a warning that there are images some people may find distressing.
Clinging on as the powerful floodwaters rage around them. Relief as rescue arrives just in time. And for others too, escape hatches ripped through roof tiles provide hope of survival. But many lives have been lost and dozens of people are missing. Here, a helicopter hovers, help so close. Then this. It's not known if they survived. The floods that have hit southern Brazil's Rio Grande do Sul are the result of intense and relentless rainfall.
It's the worst disaster ever recorded in the history of Rio Grande do Sul. Perhaps one of the biggest disasters the country has ever seen, at least in recent history.
The state is used to extremes of weather, from drought to downpour. But many scientists believe climate change is making it worse. An extra-tropical cyclone in the same area in September left 50 people dead. Electricity, water supplies and communications have been cut across the state, making it impossible for many to find out if their loved ones are safe. We've been through a lot, said this woman. Since Tuesday, we've had no news, no idea where they were, but thank God everything worked out. Tens of thousands have been forced to leave their homes, and the destruction of this latest disaster is not done yet. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
The family of Daniel Anjorin have issued a statement paying tribute to their son. 14-year-old Daniel was attacked by a man with a sword in Hainault in East London on Tuesday. A dual Spanish-Brazilian national living in Newham has been charged with murdering the teenager. Well, Arsenal have also paid tribute to the boy. At 14 minutes into the match against Bournemouth, fans at the Emirates broke into applause, holding a banner saying "R.I.P. Daniel" among the crowd. Our correspondent Amelia Harper has more detail.
That's right. This evening, Jonathan, we have had a statement from the family of Daniel paying tribute to him after he was killed on his way to school on Tuesday. This was an attack that unfolded in Hainault in North London, starting at around 7 a.m. And within 22 minutes, 5 people had been attacked, including Daniel and 2 police officers. One of those police officers received serious injuries, nearly losing their hand, police say. There we have a picture of the young boy there on the screen. A few hours later, police said after that attack on Daniel, he had died of his injuries. And today, his family have paid tribute to him and thanked the wider community. In it, a statement says, "We as a family are devastated by the loss of our beloved son Daniel. It is difficult for us at this time to process what has happened to him and that he will never come home. Daniel had left the house for school and then he was gone. Our children have lost their loving and precious brother, and we have lost the most loved and amazing son. We would like to send our best wishes to the other victims of this unthinkable incident." Well, a man has appeared in court in connection with this incident. 36-year-old Marcus Arduini Monzo, a dual Spanish-Brazilian national living in Newham in East London. He's been charged with the murder of Daniel and injuring 4 others. He is next set to appear at the Old Bailey on Tuesday.
OK, Amelia, thank you. 31,000 properties in St Leonards and Hastings in East Sussex are without water due to a burst main. Tonight, Southern Water say they have fixed the burst pipework, but water will only flow into taps once tests are complete, so the problem could continue into tomorrow. Sky's Rachel Venables reports now from East Sussex.
There's no water.
Not a drop.
It's really distressing. Kids are going to school on Tuesday. I'm going to work on Monday. All my work things, I can wash them.
31,000 homes like Blessings have now been out of water since Thursday, and people are really starting to struggle. This woman lives in sheltered accommodation. She says her emergency water was stolen when it was left out in the car park.
People were coming from outside, stopping their cars, running in and grabbing the water and off. Trying to wash my hair with water is like going back to the war again.
Up to 70,000 people are thought to still be without water, so 4 stations like this one have been set up with huge queues of people building throughout the day, filling up their bags, their shopping trolleys and their car boots with mounds of bottled water.
Water should be being delivered directly to 6,000 vulnerable households, but not everyone's been receiving it.
I've had to call somebody out of town to pick us up, to drive us here, because every time we've asked what's happening with the water for the vulnerable, all they keep saying is you'll get it when you get it and just give you a reference number, but nobody comes, nobody calls you back.
The disruption's expected to last until Sunday.
Pipes do burst at times. In terms of profits, we aren't making a profit. To be absolutely clear, we aren't making a profit at the moment. We are investing everything into the company and into the network.
Southern Water says this is all caused by a broken pipe in difficult-to-access woodland, but the incident's raised more questions about the state of our water infrastructure.
We obviously have a lot of networks of pipes and drains, and they need to be renewed roughly every 50 to 60 years. Our renewal rates in many places are 1,000 years.
The crisis has even put the Morris dancing at risk at Hastings' traditional Jack in the Green festival.
This year, Southern Water have managed to completely close our beach because it was covered in sewage. They have managed to completely flood our town centre because they couldn't deal with the water that was coming through. And now they've managed to completely cut us off from water on the biggest weekend of the year.
At least for the Morris dancers, the pub taps are still running. But for residents, it's going to be thirsty work until their water can be restored. Rachel Venables, Sky News in Hastings.
OK, time for the sport now. Let's head over to James at Sky Sports News.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
The Whitsunday Islands, spectacular every day of the week, on the surface at the very least. The brightest of white sand beaches, the clearest of azure blue seas. The most perfect of places for an F1 driver to relax after a hectic start to the season.
Oscar, great to see you, and what a place. Here we are at the Whitsundays. Impressions?
Yeah, it's very, very nice. I've been here once before when I was a little kid, but it definitely doesn't get old, so it's nice to be back.
Yeah, F1 is a pretty intense world, I guess. When you do get away from it all, do you try and connect with nature?
We go to a lot of cities and a lot of amazing places in Formula One, but yeah, getting outside of the city sometimes and getting into nature is always nice. I think, especially in my home country, in Australia, it's nice to see some more parts of it, definitely.
The Great Barrier Reef, you know, it's an iconic natural wonder of the world. Do young Australians feel protective of it? Because it's not in the best of health right now, as you know. Yes, correct. I think we are very protective of it. And I think, again, as I've gotten older and come back and trying to see it now, yeah, I think I'm more and more protective of it. And I want the future generations to be able to see it. So it's very important for all of us.
The Great Barrier Reef is the size of 70 million football pitches, big enough to be seen from space. But to say it's losing its lustre is putting it lightly. Climate change has caused global sea temperatures to rise, and in the last 8 years alone, there have been 5 mass bleaching events. That's where the coral is stressed, its colours fade and turn a deadly white. If the coral suffers, so does everything dependent on it, and reefs support a staggering quarter of all marine life, more species than are found in rainforests. But this is where McLaren want to step in, using F1 innovation for good.
We decided as part of our climate contribution programme to partner with the Great Barrier Reef Foundation because there is such an important need to help restore and preserve damaged ecosystems. We have a lot of engineering expertise, we look at data and analytics, we have a high performance culture and we're really targeted on what we're trying to achieve, and we do it at speed. And that's really what the world needs in terms of climate solutions.
McLaren care about this issue. They want to represent. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great part of McLaren and part of our culture definitely is trying to help the world in ways outside of motorsport. Of course, we're a racing team and a Formula One team, and we strive to be successful on the track, but I think we want to leave a mark on the world as well, and not just be a successful Formula One team.
Last year, success took a while to arrive. McLaren had to wait 10 Grand Prix for their first podium at Silverstone. Oscar then won the sprint race in Qatar, the team eventually 4th in the Constructors' Championship. The Reef requires a similar comeback story.
Really dumb question here, but
there's no left or right.
Right, okay.
This nation, that wide outdoors and the coastal lifestyle and the beach and the ocean, it helped make Oscar. So, you know, in a way, he's giving back and helping her be stronger as well. So I'm really excited.
This is the underwater footage you're probably used to seeing when it comes to destinations like the Reef. The reality, however, is rather different. The punchy, bright hues are gone. The pastel yellows and browns dominate.
I really do believe with what we've been able to progress in the last 5 years, we can win this battle. This is a battle we can win in climate change. We can help corals live with climate change by restoring them at scale and toughening them up to the warmer water.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we're going to take a first look at Sunday's papers in the press preview. And tonight I'm joined by the senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calgie, and the writer and broadcaster, Amy Nicole-Turner. Among the topics that we're going to be discussing, no surprises, this election story on the front of The Observer. Their headline, stunning, Labour wins in key major races, leave Prime Minister reeling. We'll be right back, don't go away.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
For detectives, the first 48 hours after a murder are crucial in the search for clues. The public expects them to find Jill Dando's killer soon. The British detectives are planning to meet forensic experts, academics, and even witch doctors.
I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it.
Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders.
I've never murdered anyone, I've never raped anyone. What am I in jail for?
The parole board has to decide if Bronson needs to be kept locked up for the safety of the public. My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martin Brunt, Sky News at the Old Bailey.
You're watching Sky News. Now, in a moment, the press preview, we're going to check out the front pages of Sunday's papers. But first, let's take a look at our top stories tonight. And the Labour Party are celebrating a surprise win in the West Midlands tonight, with their candidate, Richard Parker, securing a narrow victory in the race to be mayor. The Conservative incumbent, Andy Street, was defeated in a major blow for the Prime Minister. 59 people have been killed and dozens are missing after record-breaking floods in Brazil. And the parents of sword attack victim Daniel Angerin have paid tribute to the teenager, saying they have lost the most loved and amazing son. A very good evening. It is time for the press preview. It's our first look at what is on tomorrow's front pages. And tonight we'll be checking out the headlines with the senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calgie, and the writer and broadcaster, Amy Nicole-Turner. A very good evening to both of you. We will chat in a moment. Let's check out some of those front pages first, though. The continuing Conservative election nightmare, including the narrow loss of the West Midlands mayoralty to Labour, is lead story in the Observer, with fresh calls from the Labour leader for a general election. The Telegraph highlights Labour's mayoral wins in the West Midlands and also London, all of which, says the Sunday Times, has gone to boost Keir Starmer's hopes of getting the keys to number 10. We'll show you that in a bit. Let's take a look at the Sunday Express. We're doomed. Lame duck PM loses Tory stronghold. That's their headline. And the People leads with those awful stabbings at Hainault in London. And don't forget, you can scan the QR code that you see on screen during the programme. You can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us discussing them. And I'm joined tonight by the writer and broadcaster, Amy Nicole-Turner, and senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calgie. Great to see you both this bank holiday weekend. And what a 48 hours it has been. Quite remarkable, hasn't it? The twists and turns. And it finished, Amy, on a knife-edge result. No one knew which way it was going to go until the last minute. And then Andy Street losing his title of Mayor of the West Midlands and putting Rishi Sunak in a whole heap of trouble.
Yeah, what a swing. What a swing across the country. And it was all hanging on Andy Street, who was ultimately a very, very popular local mayor. So it seems like Rishi Sunak has essentially robbed him of his mayoral title, because he's a great he's a great mayor. And I think it's symbolic because Rishi Sunak is now essentially squatting in number 10, I would say. You mentioned the keys to number 10. Their keys are Keir Starmer's, aren't they? So my question would be, does Rishi Sunak have a mandate at this point? And I think The Observer feels the same. You know, they're talking about ending the purgatory of zombie rule. Rishi Sunak needs to put this to the people now, because through what we've seen through these results, he doesn't have the people's support anymore. And Andy Street felt that today, and he didn't deserve to.
OK, well, let's have a listen to what Andy Street had to say, because he said, didn't he, that he felt the blame had to be on his shoulders. He wasn't blaming anyone else. He wasn't blaming the Prime Minister or indeed the wider Conservative Party. He said it was all down to him. Let's have a listen.
I feel actually incredibly proud of what I and my Conservative team have done here. As you said in your question, 1,500 votes in it when many people gave us no chance given the national polls. And so actually I'm not in any mood for blaming and allocating that around. It was my campaign. I did it, dare I say it, my way. It wasn't quite good enough, and I am the only person responsible for this.
What's your take, Christian, on all of this? Let's perhaps bring in the front of the Sunday Telegraph. Labour wins in West Midlands and London. Quite a busy night for newspaper editors trying to get the headline at the last minute, but many of them have managed it. What's your takeaway?
Well, I think the last 24 hours have been as bad as they could have been for Rishi Sunak. He was very much hoping that MPs, journalists might look at the fact they held on in the Tees Valley with Ben Houchen and perhaps get bored and move on and have a nice bank holiday weekend. But what has happened today is the results got even worse, compounded by what was an absolute bodge job in expectation management with London. And actually, even though Sadiq Khan didn't have a particularly convincing win, the fact he ended up winning by 10 points, the fact that it had been briefed that Susan Hall was in a position to be coming close to that means that Labour and Starmer, both in London, the West Midlands, right across the country, have stolen an absolute march. And what I'm picking up, what many journalists are picking up, is the utter gloom, dejectedness, fatalism of Tory MPs now. The Sunday Telegraph has some quotes from Suella Braverman, who, on the one hand, positively says it is not now the time to change leader. She says, effectively, it's too late. It should have been done a long time ago. And she says, the hole to dig us out of is the Prime Minister's, and it's time for him to start shoveling. And really, I think if Rishi Sunak wants to stay in power now, he has got to work his socks off. And I don't mean win the election. I just mean to stay in office between now and this supposed November election.
Well, apparently he's got some suggestions. So to attempt to get back on the front foot, which would take some doing, he's decided he's going to push ahead with his Rwanda plan, crack down on illegal immigration and crack down further on people claiming sickness benefits. I don't know if that's going to be much of a vote winner at this point.
Yeah, do you think he'll take some comfort, a glimmer of comfort, from the fact that if you look at a projection to the general election based on these results, then it's perhaps not as bad as some had feared? Michael Thrasher suggesting they might be 10% ahead Labour as opposed to 20% or so in the polls.
Yeah, and there were slight gaps in the voting, and I think that came down primarily to the stance on Gaza, and equally some people aren't getting behind Keir Starmer because he's seen as furthering austerity measures and sort of backing, particularly with things like the two-child benefit cap. So it's true, they do still have a little bit of work to do, and I'm not sure that anyone is a massive Keir Starmer fan. We don't really see that. But I think they've got the same thorn in their side in the sense that there's a similarity between that and what Reform are doing to the Conservative vote, because with the example of Andy Street bringing that back, if Reform hadn't have stood, he would have won that. He would have won the mayoral election there.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, that, isn't it? And let's bring in your paper, Christian, the Sunday Express. We're doomed. Lame duck PM loses Tory stronghold is the headline. What do your voters think of Rishi Sunak? What do they think, indeed, of Reform?
I think reform is a very attractive option for our readers because they are offering a conviction vision of what the country should be.
What, just no more migrants? Is that kind of... Because they want to take 5% off each budget, each government department, right? They want to shave off...
I think I'm not going to be a spokesperson for the Reform Party, and I think actually their small boat policy has a number of flaws in it, but I think what people want is decisive leadership, and they're not getting it from the Tories at the moment. There's some great quotes in this story. So if we can't win here, I think this was about the West Midlands, then we're doomed. He's a lame duck leader, and it looks like we'll all be limping on to defeat at the general election. Another Conservative source says it's a sure harbinger of the coming electoral doom. And this is now, I think, the problem for Rishi Sunak. I don't pick up the appetite for a change in leader.
We've had enough of them.
Well, you can't have 4 prime ministers in 5 years. But my goodness, how do you govern a party from now until November when the party has not just given up on you, but it almost feels like they've given up on existing? It's like they've had a terminal sort of diagnosis and now just waiting for the end.
Yeah, let's bring in the front of the Sunday Times then. Defeat for Street boosts Starmer's hopes of number 10. And Amy, on that point that Christian was saying, it's almost as if the Conservatives are caught now between a more centrist Labour Party and Reform, and this feels almost like a battle, doesn't it, for the soul of the Conservative Party. But it's a bit late to be having that battle, given that a general election is around the corner.
But I think we have been seeing these shifts in by-elections as far back as when Boris Johnson was in power and we had the Chesham and Amersham swing. I think people are just looking in their bank accounts and they're not feeling as well off as they were in 2010, and it's been 14 years in the making, this demise, and it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts. There's just been so many little movements towards what we now see as Victorian levels of inequality in the 6th richest economy in the world, and people are just sick of that and ready for a change and a bit of hope, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Only a week ago, Rishi Sunak was sort of on the front foot, really. We had the Rwanda deal had gone through, welfare reform, there was...
Defence as well.
Defence budgets.
And that was, I think, those things... They played in Westminster. Tory MPs felt more optimistic. The problem was that we didn't see that translate through into any polls. That is the core of the problem, is I think voters have stopped listening. And nothing can turn that around. That is what happens at the end of long periods of government with you know, Brown and with John Major. This is the natural course of events, and I think most Tory MPs will agree. The problem isn't the leadership; it's the fact that whoever is trying to change the direction of the ship, the steering wheel is no longer connected to the rudder. And I don't think they can change direction because the public have had enough.
I think it's because the public are feeling the impact of this government. People are looking at their mortgages. People are trying to get GP appointments. People's kids are going to schools that are made of aero bars. Like, they've just had enough.
Well, I think that is the... I think, actually, number 10 could possibly agree with you, not publicly, but what they would say is actually a lot of the stuff that's talked about, the culture wars, the Gaza, that is peripheral. What matters in an election is the economy, and that is still what number 10 are going to be banking on, is go long, hope that interest rates come down, inflation probably hit 2%, we'll be out of a recession when the next figures come through, and pray that by that point people are feeling a bit optimistic. I just don't happen to agree with them in that optimism.
No, OK. Great to get your thoughts on what has been a fascinating couple of days. Thank you very much. We'll speak again in a moment. Coming up after the break, you needed some good news, and now King Charles gets just that with this story. It's on the front of the Mail on Sunday. Just what the doctor ordered. Poll boost for Charles. Don't go away.
Well, Peter Andre, of course, one of the decade's pop icons, is joining us now and here with Leah and I on set. Peter, very good morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to see you. You know, I look back and I think, why was I wearing jeans in the middle of the scene?
Because music videos were all the rage and you just had to go along with it. Actually, why don't we start there? Music videos, did they grow or fall in prominence since the 90s? What do you think? In terms of the importance of selling the records?
I think 80s were when videos were the most important, and then it was a slight sort of decline after that, I think. 90s was popular, but as it's gone on, videos have been sort of less effective, I think. Music, film, Steven Spielberg films, food, you know, cinemas, VHS. I pulled out a VHS recorder the other day and my kids were like, What is that?
Well, how did you manage to play it? Do you still
you can now buy these things online, actually, that connect you from your VHS to your computer. Very interesting. I just don't know how to keep it there. That's the problem. So what happened was, we were climbing up a waterfall. I said, guys, this looks like a great location. Because I was really part of developing this whole image idea of this video. And so I climbed up in my jeans, looking at this place, and I went, start filming here. This looks great lighting.
Have you ever shown your kids this video? Yeah, they must be aware of it.
You know, they're proud, but they also, there's a few eye rolls and a few, what's that move, and what's this, and what's that?
Eye rolls to what? The haircuts?
Pretty much everything, I think. You know, I think when you look back at the 80s, I was not an 80s baby, as in I loved the music of the 80s, but my music was in the 90s. But if you look at the 80s specifically, superstars were superstars. You know, if Madonna was on the radio, you knew it was Madonna. If Michael Jackson came on the radio, you knew it was Michael Jackson. Now, there's great songs out there, but you kind of don't know who's who unless you're in with what's going on social media. So it's a different time. Better for some artists because it means there's more exposure for everybody, but not so great for some artists if you want to sell the kind of volume of records that we used to sell back in the day, because it was physical sales. People would wait to go to the store and buy that record, and it would be such a huge moment, you know?
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Still with me, the writer and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner and the senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calgi. Good to see you both again. Well, away from the election, there is other news happening. As the Mail on Sunday tells us, they've done an exclusive poll. Someone's got some good news when it comes to what the public think of them, and that is the King. I mean, slightly bizarre having this story on the front of the Mail on Sunday, given everything that's gone on over the last couple of days, but there we are. They've gone for just what the doctor ordered, poll boost for Charles. Amy, they're saying that the King has received a major vote of confidence on the anniversary of his coronation.
Well, I am thrilled that someone has had a vote of confidence and that this is the poll that the Mail wants to draw our attention to, and they've conveniently just ignored all the other polls that may or may not have happened today. But they have taken the time to home in on Angela Rayner just off to the side there to just try and stick the knife in a little bit.
It is basically the most positive front page for the Conservative Party.
I've got to admire their efforts, I have to say.
But I think this was probably always going to happen. I know there was some hesitancy when the King came to the throne. He's had a very rocky life compared to the Queen, a lot of personal trials and tribulations. But I was always very confident that once he was in the job and people got to see what made him tick and how he interacted with the public, and they're saying that a clear majority of the public want to keep the monarchy and only around a quarter now want a republic.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you'd think the Mail, King Charles is notoriously green. I think he'd be fully in support of things like ULEZ. Yet he's apparently really popular. So
well, the numbers are interesting. Do you think the monarchy is good or bad for Britain? 52% said good, 27% said bad. Should Charles, this is an interesting one, should Charles continue to speak out on issues that matter to him? 57% said yes, only 30% said no.
They don't like royals when they start chatting.
That's until they're confronted with what those views are, surely.
Yeah, to be a popular royal,
if they're offended, they might not agree so much.
That's it. Who are better role models, William and Kate or Harry and Meghan? No surprise there. 71% saying William and Kate, 14% saying Harry and Meghan. OK, well, it's an interesting front page, given everything that's gone on.
Also, the Angela Rayner bit, I'm like, OK, fine, I want to talk about this woman's second house. Most people in this country can't even afford a house. There are 140 homeless children in this country. No one cares about Angela Rayner, OK?
Do you think that story? Do you think that story's cutting through?
No.
Well, there was a BBC correspondent in Manchester who said it hadn't particularly come up on the doorstep. I think this is one of those stories that might only cut through as and when the police report back. But clearly it hasn't worked ahead of the local elections to turn around the Tories' fortunes at this point.
Not. It's about as interesting as that Cobra beer that Keir Starmer had in Durham. It's not happening.
I happen to think the police ruled wrong on that one, but I think the problem with this story is it is very complicated, and it's all, she said, he said about land registry and whether it was electorally wrong, whether there was potential tax implications, which basically I don't think anyone can get their heads around.
It's a matter of £3,000. Do you know what, though? If you can go into someone's past with a fine-tooth comb and try digging for dirt as much as this newspaper would, and that's all you can find, I find that quite encouraging for our future Deputy PM.
OK, good point. Listen, let's finish with this story. I mean, it's desperately sad, isn't it? It's on the front of the Sunday People. We will ban the sword that killed Daniel. Daniel's parents have issued a very moving statement today, but Labour says that it will force through a swift ban on swords following the killing of Daniel. I mean, how do you get hold of one of these swords in the first place? And also, how do you ban them? I mean, it's a sort of strange take.
Yes, it's one of those policy promises which seems very obvious on. At the front of it, but then you start thinking, well, why might the government have not already done this? I mean, the government's already announced 2 or 3 bans now on so-called zombie knives, which are the very large knives that have sort of perforated edges and sort of designs on them. Clearly, these swords were already illegal to carry in public. So either the government is getting advice saying there's a clear sort of industry need for machetes, or it's clearly inaction. But I'd be very surprised if the government weren't listening to the plight of this family. And, actually, these machetes are, I've seen one.
So it's a samurai sword.
It's a samurai sword.
Yeah.
I've seen a horrible, terrifying knife on the streets, and many people have. And that's why I was so offended last week when this happened, and just the week before, Sadiq Khan had laughed when this issue of knives were raised and accused his Tory opponent of watching too much of The Wire. I thought that was deeply offensive.
But in his defence, she had used in her campaign a video shot in, I think, Baltimore, which was completely irrelevant, and that was what he was making reference to. And actually, Sadiq Khan's approach to knife crime is more holistic, and he recognises that it's very complex and includes, social policy, economic policy.
Working.
It's probably not working because after years of austerity, our mental health services are failing. Our education is failing. So I think for anything to actually work, you need support in prevention and education from central government. If anything, a ban like this would be welcome, but I think ultimately it would be just symbolic.
Symbolic, yeah. saying here that Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has pledged to outlaw the weapons after years of Tory dithering. She spoke, of course, as Daniel's devastated parents paid tribute to the most loved and amazing son. Desperately sad. OK, thank you both very much. We shall chat again in half an hour or so. Right now, we're going to take a look at the weather. Well, it is looking changeable over the bank holiday weekend with showery outbreaks for many, but it will feel warm, at least in the sunshine. Southern parts will have a mostly fine, if chilly, start tomorrow, but there will be mist and fog in places, some rain as well. For Cornwall, the north looks mostly cloudy with outbreaks of rain. Now, tomorrow morning will stay mostly cloudy with further outbreaks of rain, but northwest Scotland can expect some sunny spells. Most other places will see plenty of warm sunshine and just the odd shower, but the southwest of Britain will see cloud and outbreaks of rain taking over. Now, cloud will extend into more of southern Britain and the south of Ireland later, bringing a little patchy rain, while the southwest will brighten to a few showers. North East Scotland will see showery outbreaks turning heavy in places. There'll be little change elsewhere. And on to Bank Holiday Monday, it will bring sunny spells and a scattering of potentially heavy showers to most, but the northwest looks cloudier and mainly dry. It'll be quite warm for most. Coming up next here on Sky News at 11 o'clock, reaction to a shock win for Labour in the race to be the West Midlands mayor as Sir Keir Starmer calls for a general election as soon as possible.